Hello student, uh, we will start computer application class for class 12 and before that whenever we start about the computer class and programming language, especially in Java or Blue Java, we have to learn about the concept of object oriented programming, that is concept of OOPS. First we have to know about the concept, and after that we have to implement that concept in programming language. So whenever we start our study, we have to know about the basic principles of object oriented programming, because Java and Blue Java especially is a object oriented programming language. Now we have to know about the language. Actually language is a medium of communication. That means whenever one's want to communicate with other, he or she have to know about the language, and that language should be understood by the counterpart. So language is a medium of communication. Similarly, in case of when we communicate with an electronics device like computer, so we have to know the language of computer, that computer can easily understand what instruction, what program we are executing for computer. So computer is an electronics device, and that accept instruction in a specific language, and we all know that computer specific language is the machine language. Machine language means the language which is consists of 0 and 1, because computer only know about 0 and 1 and nothing else. But in case of user, that means for us, we don't know the total language in 0 1 form. So our language is more English like language, or so we have to know about the specific language by which we can instruct the computer, and computer execute that instruction. Basically computer and that is the requirements of to know the computer language. Actually, that's the need of learning of computer language. So computer language broadly classified into two types. One is high level language, and other is low level language. But low level language means the language initially when we developed computer and developed different types of program. So our main motto was to run the computer for executing specific tasks by giving some specific instruction. So only computer is as computer is a electronics device, so it is run on electric current. That means it creates some voltage, and that voltage is converted through rectifier, through digital diodes, triode transistors. It's in the form of 0 and 1. That means by using flip-flop circuit we developed 0 and 1. So we have to send it the instruction in the form of 0 and 1. That 0 1 form is called the binary digital form. So that language which is consist of continuous 0 and 1, that language is called machine language. And still now computer only know the 0 and 1. So this is the low level language, and initial language is machine language. And whenever we face some problem to convert it all our instruction in the form of 0 and 1, the scientists developed the another short language which actually we can use the some operational code based language, and that language is assembly language. So assembly language is also a low level language, and machine language is primitive low level language, and assembly language is something operational code based language. That means the some codes already defined in the form of 0 1, and that form easily understandable for us. So the assembly code, assembly operational code language converted to machine language by using assembler. So assembler is a specific program which convert the assembly language into the machine language. And that means in the form of 0 and 1. And suppose we want to add the two numbers, so on that case we can develop the assembly language in that form, that we enter the value of a, and then we enter the value of b, and add it, that means sum of a and b, and finally print out of the a and b, that means a plus b sum, and that's the end of the program. So on that case, what instruction we are giving there, that LDA and another the LDB, and then add a comma b, and then sum to show sum, that means st c is another variable which contain the addition value of a and b. So here we use the concept of accumulator. So though in your syllabus there is no such concept of accumulator, accumulator is nothing, it's just like a pen, and in pen where whenever we create some food in kitchen, what we do, we takes all types of vegetables in a particular pan, and we mix it and make some vegetable food. So then that is we take the data from A, from B, and put in a accumulator, and that accumulator is the add the two values. So this is the way of assembly language, and that language is directly converted to machine language, that means 001 form, by using assembler. So assembly language and machine language, or machine language and assembly language, these are the two types of language developed by a scientist in initial stage to communicate with computer, is the low level language. And whenever we gradually developed different types of hardware development and software development, we find that assembly language is quite tough for us to understand. So on that case we create some high level language. So high level language is just like a English type language, but not specifically the English language or the language we use to communicate with each other. So high level language also have some specific category actually. So initially high level language, because computer still understand only 0 and 1, so we have to convert the high level language again into a machine language, and on that case we are using the two specific program. For initially we use interpreter. Interpreter is a specific program. That program interpreted the high level programming syntax into the machine language by line. That means it takes time to execute the total high level language program into machine code, that means 0 and 1 binary digit in binary form. And another thing is compiler. The compiler is just like an interpreter, but interpreter only translate the data line by line, but a compiler as a whole That means whenever you create a program and execute in a compiler takes the total program in high level language and convert into machine level language and send to computer, give the computer for specific instruction or specific tasks, and after execution that specific tasks, computer again give the output data to the compiler, and compiler again fetch the data in a specific format. That format, that output easily understandable by us. So these are the basic difference between the compiler and interpreter. Nowadays we are use various type of compiler to convert our programming language into low level language. So high level language are basically three types: structure oriented, procedure oriented, and object oriented. So structure oriented and procedure oriented somehow near about same, but we can say that procedure oriented have more features than structure oriented. So initially structure oriented program, what we do actually, so we develop the program in structural form, and that structure are execute and that means run and give us the required output. But later we find that the structure oriented programming, it takes so much time to detect the error is not easier for us. So we developed procedure oriented language, and procedure oriented language is easy to understand, and it's also has some specific utilities in that sense, that procedure oriented language use the concept of function. If you complete in your mathematics that there is a function, so function, what function actually do? Function is a specific rules or specific equation. So in that equation, if you put the value of x, and if the function is fx is equal to 2x plus 5y, 2x plus 5, then whenever we put the value of x is equal to 3, it will be the 2 into 3 plus 5, that means 11. So function is a equation, function is a rule, function is a specific structure, and that structure we use the value, and that value gives us a specific result. So by using function and various type of logical operators, programming operators, loop concept, we use the procedural language, and procedural language have some specific qualities. Initially procedural language, it's okay. Still now we are using different type of procedural language like C. C is most famous, and C is still using in our computer world. But later on we find that procedural language have some little bit problem, because its activities is totally top down approach. So whenever you start your program, the program will be continue through top to down approach, and to find the logical error, find the programming error, it is quite tough. So we are introducing a new type of concept, and that concept of programming language is called object oriented programming language. So object oriented programming language is basically emphasize on data rather than function, because in procedural language, whenever we follow the procedural language, we find that the total concept emphasizes on the function, and we use the data globally. That data will be moved from one function to another function. Suppose there is two function, one is fx, another is gx, then we can use the same value of x in fx and gx also. That means the we are very much focused on function, the structure of the function, the various segments, that is the operators, such things, loops. But in object oriented programming, we focused on the data. That means the emphasis on the data value rather than the functions. So what are the features we introduce in object oriented programming, and that help us to communicate with computer easily, and also the language will be easily understood by us, or easily easily learned. So object oriented programming language have some special features. It's emphasize on data value, data are secure and protected, and it is quite easy to detect the errors, and easier to code a complex and tough program. And so nowadays we are very much focusing object oriented programming concept and object oriented programming. So object oriented programming is a style in which it associate with some specific qualities. Actually, first we have to introduce the concept of class, and then concept of object, and some special features like data abstraction, encapsulation, inheritance, polymorphism. So these concepts are not available in procedural or structural language. So in object oriented language, we have to learn all such features. So before we have to know about the object oriented language, we have to know about the class and function. Now I give you some example what is actually class. Class is a prototype. Prototype is a little bit tough. Let's think about the class. Suppose we are man. So man have some specific features. So we have some variable features, and we have some methods actually. So we can say that class is a collection of variables and methods. Variables and method in such a form that if we think about a class, the name of the class is dog. So dog have some variables. That means dog have age, dog have color, dog have bead, and dog have some size. And dog have some methods also, and the methods are dog eat, dog bark, dog run, dog sleep. So if we think about a class dog, so dog have some variables, that means data value, and some methods or functions. So by binding all in a particular prototype, that is the class. So class is a collection of similar object. Whenever we define the object, we will say the class is a collection of similar object. We can say that class is a collection of variables and method in a single unit. That is about the class. And object, what is object? Object is the instance of class. Object is an instance of class. That means if we think about the class man, and then the object will be the Ram, Sam, me, Hari, like that. So Ram is a instance of the class man. Sam is also an instance of class man. So object is what? Object is an instance of class. So here object, how we define, that means in a particular object all the features of a class is included there. So that means object also have some variables, and objects also have methods or function, and that data values or data variables will be accessible by its own function and methods. Now we discuss about we give an example of a class dog. So dog have some variables. That variables is the size, its age, its color, and the dog have some functions. The functions are sleep, eat, bark, or sit, like that. So now this is the concept, a total concept of an class dog. Now there is a dog in your home, and that dog, one dog is barking behind me. That dog is Kalu, or some dog have a Tommy. So Kalu, Tommy, Lalu, Bholu, all are the instance of a class a dog. That means the all are object, and they have all same features which already in class dog. Okay, so this is the concept of a class and its object. So whenever we know how to develop, how to make a syntax of a class, in later we will be discuss, and how to create or instance of a class. So whenever I say that class is a collection of similar object, that means the dog class is the collection of Kalu, Lalu, Bholu, Tommy. So these are the name of the dogs, and that dogs all have the belongs to a particular class, and that class is dog. So this is all about the class and its object. And whenever we go through the programming language, we have to develop lots of class and lots of object. But the main features is that whenever we create a class, we make its instance, that makes its object, and that object can do its own tasks given below. Still the dog is barking. Okay. Similarly, next, whenever we think about the concept of inheritance, concept of we have specific some specific properties of the OOPS concept, or object oriented programming language concept, and that concept are inheritance, abstraction, encapsulation, and polymorphism. The inheritance, abstraction, that means data abstraction, data encapsulation, and data polymorphism. And another basic features of the object oriented programming is that the reusability. That means whenever you develop a program or a syntax of program or a particular class or object, you can use it in many place of a computer, many in programming language. So first we have to discuss about the data abstraction. Now we think about the concept of abstraction or abstract concept. Abstract means the concept, the theoretical concept, abstract, and that abstract basically hide the details of a particular tasks or particular functions or particular details, actually object, and it's only show the required. That means we have to store, we have to use the specific features which we required, and hide all the other features. This is the concept of abstraction. So whenever you drive a car, so in a car, what we have to know, about the steering and the brake, clutch, or the light on and off. We have not to know about the details, how they are actually operating in background. So this is the concept of abstraction. So abstraction is a techniques of hiding internal details of a program and representing the essential features without knowing the background details. So it's a specific techniques of object oriented programming concept or language which hide the details of the program and only represent the essential parts. So this is the concept of abstraction. This is data abstraction, and we use the data abstraction in our programming language, and I will give you the various example how we execute such programs. Later we have to know about the encapsulations. Now encapsulations, let's think about the capsule, the medicine capsule. So in a capsule, what happened, we just bind the data in a particular envelope. So that is the capsule. Similarly, the encapsulation is the techniques or methods. It's bind up the data along with its correlated methods, because in a class we know that some have a member variable and some have a member functions or member methods. So in a class we have variables and methods. So encapsulation is a process, is a techniques which binds the data variables and its correlated methods in a particular form, and that is the concept of encapsulation. That means wrapping of data and function. This is the concept we use in object-oriented programming language. So encapsulation is a technique of binding up the data along with correlated methods in a single units, and that units we use the object and data and function of an object as a unit. So in OOPS, data and functions are grouped or managed together in such a way that data items are only accessible within the function of the same objects. So this is very important. We have to know that in procedural language, what we can use, that by using the function we can access the global data. Now before that we have to know about the data, and data is in private or global, and also we have to know about the activities of the function. But in object-oriented programming, we are use that specific data only accessible by the methods of itself. That means if we use a method or function like the color of dog, suppose such a function, so on that case we are use the color of color variable inside the dog class. So this is the way actually data and function are grouped or merged together in such a way that data items are only accessible within the functions of the same object. So this is very important for encapsulation. So encapsulations means wrapping the data and its function. And whenever the main program, we know that in programming language, whenever we execute the program, we only execute the main function, main program. So main program can't access the data directly. If it have to access the data, then it have to go through the particular function, and that function can access the data of that object. So this is the concept of encapsulation, to encapsulate the variables or methods or functions. Means method and functions are the same things. Encapsulation of variables and functions in a particular object. This is the concept of the encapsulations. So we already have the data abstraction hiding the details, only show the essential features. That is the concept of data abstraction. And data encapsulations, that means binding the techniques that binds the variables and method in a particular object or a particular programming part. So these are the basic difference between the encapsulation and data abstraction. That means data encapsulation and data abstraction. Now another feature which is very important in the object-oriented concept is inheritance. So the word inheritance, we can understand that the data somehow inherit, or member variables somehow inherit from a particular class to its child class. That means it is a mechanism which actually inherit or acquire a particular class, acquire all the features, behaviors from its parent class. So parent class is called the base class or superclass, and the child class is called the derived class or subclass. So suppose a father and son concept. So son have all the features which already in his father. So father is the base class, and son is the derived class. Similarly, if we think about the geographical shape, so whenever we create a class geographical shape, and that geographical shape have some variables and methods, but whenever we derive a particular class, suppose triangle or quadrilateral, so triangle have all the features of the geographical shape class, and quadrilateral also have same features in the geographical shapes. So this is the concept of inheritance. That means the behavior properties will be inherit from parent class to child class. That means base class to derived class. And in programming language, we have to create the base class, and that base class will be create from that base class we create the child class or derived class. So inheritance is most important feature of object-oriented programming, and by using this inheritance, we actually we have to learn about the reusability, and that means the inheritance promote the reusability concept. Use the same thing one or many times. This is the concept of reusability. When that concept is not in procedural language. And now the final one is polymorphism. We know that polymorphism means poly means the many. So polymorphism is an ability ability of the object or a class or the variables or the functions to take multiple form, and in a single function have a many different tasks, we can say. So it creates its multiple form. For example, think about a person like me. So a person man have polymer forms. Suppose I have a small child, so I'm acting as a father. Similarly, I am also a husband, and I'm one of the employee. So a single object have a different types of form: father, husband, employee. So that means the same person possesses a different behavior, different forms. Because this is the concept